What's going on, everybody? Vulcan Turtle here, and I'm going to be going over the top 8 decks from Late Night 72. For those who don't know, Late Night 72 was the North American Late Night, and it was a lot of fun. We have some very interesting decks going into the top 8, but before we do, make sure you check out the description and hit up some of our sponsors below. It always supports the channel, and we appreciate it. So, before we go into the actual top 8, let's go into the Late Night meta. So, Late Night 72, these are the top 8 decks that saw the majority play, and I'm going to be updating this with each North American Late Night so we can see what sees play, what stops seeing play, and what increases and decreases. So next time you go into a Late Night, you can make a pretty informed decision. So as you guys can see, these were the top 8 decks, starting with Lugia Star being the most played deck in Late Night 72, followed by Mew, LZB Ray, Arc Duraludon, Goodra, Palkia, Inteleon, and Regigigas. So these were your top 8 decks that saw the majority play, but the top 8 of the actual Late Night, starting with number 8, Vina Lugia Star. So this is a very Lugia Star-ish build. I will comment on a few things that are just kind of different about this list. So, for instance, it does play a 3-3 line of Lugia Star, and the majority of some of the top Lugia decks are playing a 2-3 line of Lugia Star, but I can see where 3-3 becomes quite useful, as if you prize a certain piece, like if you prize both Lugia Star, what are you to do? So, I can totally understand why a 3-3 line is very, very attractive to some Lugia Star lists. Another very important piece that I'm noticing here is the V-Guard energy and the getting rid of Wash energy and playing Speed Lightning energy, so that way your Raikou can still make moves without having to, you know, dip into your Aurora energy for a late game Yveltal. So I really do like this build. This is a very nice straightforward build, and if you wanted to try it, here you go. So let's look into their actual matchups through Late Night 72 to see how they got to 8th place. And they had a really good phase 1, going almost undefeated, taking a tie in round 8 to try and get into, I mean, they were already solidly in phase 2 with their 7-win streak, but to get a little bit further, they decided to take a tie with Pedro, who was also playing the Lugia Star as well, and took a round 9 loss to No Sonus, who's playing Mew. Going into phase 2, things got a little scary at first. They did win their first match and then took 2 straight losses until they turned it around in rounds 13 and 14 to get the top 8, where they eventually lost to Isaiah Bradner. So great job on your run. Our 7th place was Prince Vortex with a deck that I'm super happy about, Goodra Star. I'm a huge Goodra fan, and to see it in top 8, I'm very happy about it. Now, this is a list that I kind of expected to see in, you know, maybe week 2 or 3 of Late Night, but here it is in week 1. I'm very happy about it. So let's go over their list. Now, it does play the standard 2-3 Goodra line. Now, I've had a lot of people ask questions on why players are playing 2 of the basic but 3 of the evolution, and the main reason is you don't want to start the Goodra V. You kind of want to keep it safe on the bench, but this also opens you up to Thornton plays later on, as you might have the V-Star in hand but no Goodra V because you discarded it early. So that is one of the major reasons why. The other big piece here is that they did cut 2 capture energy from your normal Goodra V-Star list and instead decided to go with 2 Drapion and also added 2 Path to the Peak. Now, that is where things can get really interesting. Goodra does have a little bit of a problem playing against Mew VMAX, and the 2 Drapion's really good, but the really down part about that is you could actually start your Drapion V, which is something you most likely don't want to do, but also playing Path to the Peak in path heavy lists, if you're up against them, you might not be able to find your Temple of Sinnoh in time in order to Moisture Star and heal your Goodra Star. So that is where things could get a little sketchy, but it worked out really well for Prince Vortex as they placed 8th, and this was the lineup that they went up against in Late Night. So phase 1, a little scary. They did actually take 2 losses in phase 1, which is the minimum amount of losses you want to see. Normally you want to go 6-2-1, but they decided that, hey, you know what, this is fine, we're gonna go 1 2 3 4 5 6 2 1 exact numbers. So the 2 losses didn't hurt them too much. They did win out against Arceus Duraludon, which isn't a deck that they really have an issue with, except for the fact that Duraludon does eat through Goodra's effective attack, where you minus damage, you reduce the amount of damage done to Goodra by 80, but Duraludon kind of just eats through that because it ignores that effect entirely. So great job there taking that win. Now, they went up against a lot of Lugia in phase 1, so congrats on those wins, and taking the final tie in round 9 to get to phase 2, really smart move, because if you had tried to play the game, yes, you would have been up more if you had won, but taking the tie means that you secure it for phase 2. So great run there, Prince Vortex. Now, 6th place is a list that I'm sure nobody's really shocked to see in the top 8. We have a No Sonus with Mew VMAX. Now, this is a version of Mew VMAX. There are currently around 3 versions of Mew VMAX to be aware of, and this is one of them. And this one is known as Path Mew. And Path Mew basically utilizes its own weakness to its advantage. It does play Path to the Peak, which shuts down its Genesects. That's not a big problem because they do play one Collapse Stadium for, you know, the Goodra plays and those decks that need to have a full bench like Lugia, but they also play 3 Lost Vacuums, so they can get rid of those paths, and that is actually a really crucial thing. So this is a list that you might run into quite a lot because it is fast, it is consistent, and it does the numbers. So this is Path Mew, and let's go ahead and look at their lineup that they went through during the matchup. So their round 1, they did really good in phase 1. They only took 1 loss, going 8 wins, 1 loss, not too bad. They did play against a lot of Lost Zone type decks, including Giratina, but they did also take the big win on Duraludon. And why is that a big deal? Because normally Mew does have a little bit of a problem against Duraludon, thanks to Duraludon not taking any damage from Pokemon with special energy, and since this list only runs 4 DTE, that could be a problem. But considering the fact that it's known as Path Mew and utilizes its own weakness to its advantage, it was able to utilize those Path to the Peaks to swing into Duraludon and take huge knockouts. So really great job. They did lose out in top 8 to the Mirror Mew. Next up in 5th place, we have Scrubbed Out, who played Palkia Vikavolt. Now, this wasn't on our meta, you know, the top 8 lists that we're seeing play, but it is a list that you could run into and something that you should maybe be on the lookout for, because while Vikavolt is a lightning type and hits into weakness like against Lugia, its main goal is to lock you out of the game, right? So you play against this and you're not going to be able to play the game if you really rely on your item cards. So this is a list that we see doing well from time to time, especially based on the matchup that it does get, but I think Scrubbed Out had a really good meta game here. Now, what I mean by meta game is they played against some of probably the better decks to go up against, because that's what's really shot them into the top 8. They had perfect lineups, but it was shaky at first. They took a round 1 loss to Prince Vortex and they took a win against Lugia, but then took another loss against Mew and said, you know what, no more, and went on a straight win streak all the way into phase 2 where they double tied into top 8, and that is really smart. Now, there's a couple of decks here to mention. They did go up against Palkia, which is a really good matchup for Vikavolt, as they do also play Raikou to take huge knockouts, but to be able to stop your opponent from being able to use item cards, especially against a deck that is weak to you, is also really, really good. So awesome job by our player here. And in 4th place, we have Dalton Cross with Lugia V-Star. Now, this is a list that most people are very comfortable with, and you're going to see where the changes in Lugia V-Star can make a bit of a difference. Now, with Lugia V-Star here, we are seeing a 3-2 line with Lugia V and Lugia V-Star. Now, the 2 Lugia V-Star is by no means bad whatsoever, but like I said, if you do end up prizing 2, what do? You may just end up taking a game loss, and that would be absolutely horrible, but there are ways around it. So let's look into the list here. Now, we already commented on the V-Star and Lugia V, but the interesting cards here are the Professor Burnett. Now, Professor Burnett by no means is a new card. We actually got her in our very first V-Union boxes when they introduced them, and what it does is it allows you to look through your deck, find 2 cards, and put them in the discard, and that is how Lugia V-Star has been able to turbo through getting Archeops into the discard as fast as possible, and as soon as turn 1 if they're going second, because they can Luminion for Burnett the 2, and then just play it safe from there, and that is actually a really, really good move. Another thing that I really like about this as well is they play 2 Luminion, but they also play in Irida. Irida is really good to get Luminion, but also whatever item card that you might need in order to get to success. And overall, this is a really good list. I really like it. It does seem like they got rid of their amazing rare Raikou for a Snorlax, the Thumping Snorlax, which isn't bad by any means. You can kind of shift the prize trade a little bit, and it's not like the unfazed fat matters too much if you're going up against Weezing. Being able to swing 180, really good, and 160 even if you have to attach a double turbo and a card. So double turbo, any energy, yeah, you do 160, but that's honestly not too bad if you're setting up numbers to get huge knockouts later. So I really like this list, very, very good. Let's go ahead and look into what they played up against. Now, they had a really good start here. They went 3-0 until they took a loss in round 4, and being able to beat Eternatus, especially nowadays where they play all those Weezing cards, really great job there. They took a win against Goodra, which can be a little bit of a rough patch. It can be a really bad matchup sometimes. Taking a loss against Palkia, but they kind of came back with the Lugia and the Mew matchup as well in rounds 5 and 6. In round 7, they took a loss to Arceus Pikachu, but turned it around in rounds 8 and 9, taking the W against Regigigas and LZB Rayquaza. Going into phase, they just said, you know what, I think we're solid if we win 3 and tie the 2, and they 100% were right. They go into round 8, beating Scrubbed Out's Vikavolt and taking a loss to Isaiah Bradner's Lugia. Going into third place here, I was like, did we skip someone? Third place, we have Fabrizio Insatan. Please let me know if I'm saying these names wrong in the comments. I truly appreciate it because I don't want anybody to be like, you said my name wrong, and I'm very sad about it. Let me know and I will do better in the future. But this is another version of Mew to look out for, which our player here piloted so great. Now they got into third place, and this is this is Mew Fusion Strike. Now, I understand what that sounds really weird and redundant to say. Mew is a Fusion Strike Pokemon, but what we're referring to here is that it plays Fusion Strike energy with Meloetta. Now, that is really good because Mew being able to go second and get a huge knockout on any V that they want is extremely crucial in certain matchups, especially against Lugia where they can only get one Lugia V down. So how do they do it? They play Meloetta and Elisa Sparkle to get 2 Fusion Strike energy into play, but also attach a Fusion Strike energy so that way they can swing huge numbers in the early game. A turn 1 going second knockout on a V is super advantageous. So they also don't play the Oricorio here to reduce numbers because the Meloetta seems to be one of the main focus going second. The other important piece to note here is that they do play 2 Lost Cities, so their Regigigas matchup isn't too scary so long as they can knock out 2 of the same Regis, get them in the Lost Zone, and they don't have to worry about that Regi acceleration anymore. Really, really solid list, so let's look at their matchups. Now, in phase 1, they only took a single loss, which was in the mirror, but it does look like that they played that same opponent 2 more times and won both of those games because they figured out how their deck works, so they probably got better starts. So there's nothing too scary here to look at when it comes to the matchups. I think one of the only scarier matchups is that Vikavolt that they faced in round 14 because item locking Mew can make a world of difference. And they decided to take the tie so they can go into top 8. Very smart move. It is a rough matchup and you're probably not going to see them again in round 8. So why not take that chance? Very, very smart. Well played. In phase 2, they did take a single loss, which was to Isaiah Bradner's Lugia, and in phase 1, they took a loss to the Mirror with Nosonis, who they then took a win in round 2, or in phase 2, and in Top Cut. So great job. Second place here is a very interesting list, one that I really did not expect to see, but it is Sir Armor with Arceus Pikachu Vulpix. I almost said Vikavolt because that's one of the only Pokemon with V in its name that's super relevant, but yes, Vulpix. Now, why is that interesting? Why is that so good? And I'm going to go into it. Now, the majority of the meta that we see have attackers with abilities, and Vulpix is actually one of those Pokemon that says, hey, when I attack, if your Pokemon has an ability, it can't hurt me. Really, really good card considering Lugia has an ability. The only main big attacker that doesn't have an ability would be Mew. So that would be one of the only decks to worry about, but you do play Drapion and you could get a pretty easy knockout on Genesect later on. So honestly, this deck has a great matchup. It has the Pikachu for those Lost Zone decks. It has the Vulpix for those decks that are heavy ability based where you can just stop taking damage from them, and the Arceus is also there to start building up all of these Pokemon. It's a really, really good deck, and it must have been really nice to pilot, considering that they got second place and they did well. I mean, with Vulpix blocking Lugias and Pikachu blocking any basic type deck, seems to be well played, and I can't wait to see if this actually sees more play in the future. There's nothing too crazy when it comes to the actual trainers themselves. It's something that you would expect. The only thing that I would say to be careful of if you plan on playing this in the future is watch out when you play your own Path to Peak, because if you play Path to Peak and attack with a Alolan Vulpix, you remove all of the abilities in play that are on Vs, allowing those Pokemon with Vs, or allowing those V Pokemon with abilities to hit into Vulpix. So it's something to look out for. So in the future, if you do play this list, make sure you're paying attention when you play those Path to the Peaks. So let's look into their matchups here. Now, phase 1, they did go 7 wins, 2 losses. Their 2 major losses being to Lugia and Goodra. Now, that might be something that they ended up not getting set up very well against, because we can see that they did play Cole Lewis again from round 9 in round 14, taking the W, and it could go either way. Bricks happen, but we do see in top 8 that another Goodra list was played against, and they took the W against Prince Vortex. They also took another major win against Mew, and maybe Path to the Peak was useful there. But eventually lost out to Isaiah Bradner in the finals. So great job to you. I'm actually very impressed with this list, and something I definitely want to try out in the future. I think it's such a really cool list. And finally, in first place, we have Isaiah Bradner Lugia V-Star. Now, it's a very straightforward Lugia V-Star, and Isaiah Bradner is just proven that Lugia V-Star is something to look out for still. It is not by any means something that you can just not think about when making a deck. It is always going to be there, and it's always going to be relevant up until its rotation, and maybe even after. Now, Isaiah does play the 1 Dunsparce, 1 Manaphy. It is something that some Lugia decks don't see. They usually remove their Dunsparce but keep their Manaphy, but never keep their Dunsparce and remove Manaphy, because they know that snipe decks exist, and once that Dunsparce is out the door, it's not going to be an easy matchup for them anymore. So Isaiah playing, I believe this is almost the exact 60 he played in Orlando, where he got second place. So I'm not 100% sure if he did or didn't, but if this is the exact 60, it just proves that matchups also matter, and when this deck is in the hands of a very experienced pro player, it can do a lot of work. So let's look into his matchups here, where he almost had a flawless late night. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it was so close to a flawless late night. So round 1, he did go up against Regis, and round 2, he did go up against Vulpix, which can be scary. But looking at his list again, he does have an attacker that can hit into Vulpix, 2 exactly. Maybe 3, but Raikou does get knocked out, but 2 that are relevant. He does have Yveltal, and he does have Stoutland. Now, so long as that Vulpix doesn't play any Parasol, but again, Isaiah does play Lost Vacuum, which can get rid of those Parasols. So at the end of the day, that was a really good matchup for him, so long as he played it correctly, and it looks like that he 100% did. He did go up against Josh Frink in round 3, another Lugia Mirror, and Ching Pak, another Lugia Mirror, until he went all the way to round 7, taking his first loss in a Lugia Mirror. Again, Lugia was the most seen deck in late night, so it makes sense that we would see a lot of these Lugias seeing mirrors. In phase 2, he did take the win against 2 Mews until he took another loss to a Lugia Mirror, deciding to take the tie to secure that top cut, and securing top cut even more by taking the win in round 14, until we get to top cut, where he just went on a spree, taking out 2 Lugias and that Arc Pikachu Vulpix deck. So congratulations to Isaiah Bradner and your insane list for taking Late Night 72. If you yourself want to play in Late Night 72, make sure you check out the description. It is free to play in and a lot of fun. So make sure you check out the description and find out how to sign up for Late Night 74, I believe, is the North American, and 73 for the European. So check out the description. It'll be down there as well. You can also check out our sponsors down below, and I had a blast covering these decks. I cannot wait to see how the future of Late Night grows, and what we will see more play and what we'll see less play. And I can't wait to see you guys there. I play in every single North American one, so make sure you definitely come check it out. It would always be appreciated. But until then, stay safe, have fun, and I'll see you guys next time.
The Shuffle Squad is proudly sponsored by Atlas Collectibles, the best place to buy any trading card game product online. Visit atlastcg.com and at the checkout screen make sure to use code TSS12 to save an unbeatable 12% off your entire order. Atlas Collectibles will ship your product anywhere in the world, so make sure you're taking advantage of the 12% savings with TSS12. And if Pokemon is not your thing, don't worry. Go to atlastcg.com and see all the other amazing trading card game products they have there to offer.
The Shuffle Squad is partnered with PTCGO Store to provide our community with the best access to Pokemon TCG codes. They have codes available 24/7, instant email delivery, and you can save 5% off by using code TSS5. If you're a YouTube member or Patreon supporter, you'll have access to a special code that gets you 10% off. So what are you waiting for? Use code TSS5 today and save 5% on your next order of codes on any codes available at ptcgostore.com.
Are you trying to be the best like no one ever was? Now is your time. Head on over to metafy.gg and search out all our amazing Pokemon TCG coaches where you can book all sorts of training plans ranging from deck help to full season sessions with your favorite coach. What a great way to up your game. Check out metafy.gg in the description below and take your game to the next level. Challenge yourself against trainers from around the world to compete for the biggest online prizing yet.
Are you ready for an unbelievable tournament unlike anything else you've ever seen before? The Shuffle Squad is proud to announce our newest tournament series, the Late Night Event, with an amazing grand prize that's bound to have you excited.
Players can compete via play.limitless.tcg.com's online tournament platform every Tuesday to get a chance to earn weekly prizes. And every week, your placement in the tournament is tallied by points based on your best finishes to earn your rank for the Late Night Invitational event.
The series will be conducted starting February 7th of 2023 and carry all the way through to the Invitational on July 9th of 2023, where the top players will be rewarded the grand prizing.
And the grand prize is a signed jersey and photo op with the entire Shuffle Squad, as well as a fully paid trip to the Pokemon World Championships in Yokohama, Japan. This includes hotel and airfare, whether you're a player or a spectator.
Don't forget to check out all the live coverage on our YouTube and Twitch channel of the top cuts of these events for every week. And subscribe so you can get notified where to watch the Late Night Events Invitational brought to you by the Shuffle Squad. Now get out there and start winning. We'll see you in Japan.